Everybody, good morning from a chilly Colorado. A lot of you have written in with some questions about what's going on with the cartels, since it's something I haven't talked about in a little bit. The big issues are that there's two cartels to really follow. The first is the Sinaloa. That's the one that thinks of drug smuggling as a business, and so as a general rule is not willing to shoot people who are among its consumers, and so they don't think there should be violence in places where their businesses are critical. So they don't want to shoot people in Mexican cities, or certainly not on the north side of the border if they can help it. It's not that they're nice. It's not that they're kind. It's not that they're murderous thugs. They are all of those. They just see violence as a tool rather than an end. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Jalisco New Generation, who has the opposite view. When they move into a town, the first thing they do is shoot the police chief and anyone who looks interesting, because their whole idea is if everyone's scared of you, then they'll either work for you or get out of your way. Two different theories, both very violent. One is more applied in that violence. Okay, so that's kind of the background. I've been going on and on about how Mexico is going to be an integral part of the American manufacturing and trading system moving forward for decades, if not over a century. That hasn't changed. The question is, to what degree do the cartels complicate that picture? Not as much as you might think. The cartels are into things that fit one of two categories. One are small, have high value, and are easy to fit into a backpack and smuggle. Obviously, narcotics fall into that category. Methamphetamines falls into that category. Or they want industries that they can push a lot of cash through in order to launder it. And that takes them into things like real estate or avocados, where there's a very clear business on the other end that is integrated into the broader system. So those are kind of the two types of businesses they go for. Anything else gets a little complicated for them because it's not their skill set. And when it comes to interfering with trade, it doesn't really work. So if they were to go into, say, a manufacturing facility in Nogales and try to take over, it's not like they would know how to operate it. They would be just a protection racket, and that would mean they'd have to be there presently all the time. Assuming that Mexican law enforcement couldn't deal with that, I think they could, then the American investors in that factory would probably lose interest and the whole thing would shut down. So there's no profit center there. They could raid things that are going in and out of the facility, but manufacturing in Mexico, as a rule, deals with intermediate manufacturers. So you're not dealing with a lot of finished cars or even finished carburetors. You're dealing with things like spark plugs and casings and seat linings. And if you get a semi full of seat lines and bolts, that's not exactly something that's easy to dispose of. You then have to find the next step in the manufacturing chain that wants it. And that requires a degree of logistics that they don't have, a degree of understanding of the industry that they don't command, and contacts that are completely unrelated to what they do currently. The biggest risk that I see to the trading relationship is the fight between these two big cartels. Sinaloa is the number one organized crime group in the United States. Jalisco New Generation is rapidly growing to be the number one within Mexico. And at the moment, Sinaloa and some other smaller cartels control all of the plazas going into the United States for the smuggling of the drugs. Jalisco is challenging those other cartels, especially the Sinaloa, for control in each and every one of them. And if they do succeed in commanding a plaza, and they do pour into our side of North America and bring their business model with them, then Americans are going to be thinking about Mexico and trade in a very different way. Now, that hasn't happened yet. They've been trying to get into this country for 3 years now, and organizationally, they're just not nearly as competent as the Sinaloa, even after their leader, El Chapo, was arrested, extradited, and sentenced to prison forever. It's just a very different mindset. But if you're going to worry about something in the trade relationship, I think that's the number one concern. So far, it's proven manageable. So far, the culture clash, if you will, is working for us. But that would still be the danger spot. All right, I'm going to go inside. It's cold out here. Bye. Hey everybody, Peter Zeihan here, coming to you from Savannah, one of my favorite cities in North America. And one of the reasons is the bars, and one of the reasons are the restaurants, and the other one, it is home to the largest container port in the continental United States. Been operating for a few years now. They keep expanding it. You're looking at here one of the more medium-sized ships. The supers do come through here. They just have a problem getting through that bridge there. All right, it's raining. We're going to do the rest of this inside. Sorry, I got waylaid by the client and couldn't do the rest of this one from Savannah, so I'm back home. Two big reasons to be really bullish and really impressed by the Port of Savannah over the years to come. The first has to do with that Jones Act that I keep talking about, the law that says that only American vessels can dock at American ports in succession. So, for example, if you're in a cargo vessel and you're delivering things to the Chinese coast, the same vessel will go point, 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 point. But if that same vessel, let's say it's Japanese, was to come to the U.S. West Coast and it stopped in Seattle, it would then have to go back to Vancouver before it could go to San Francisco, then would have to go back to Vancouver before it could go to San Diego. As a result, the push for ports is to get bigger and bigger and bigger in order to take these big foreign vessels, and it's crowded out all the smaller American ones. Because the infrastructure required to do that requires a large chunk of land, and most American cities don't have a lot of port capacity. Instead, what you get are shuttle ships, where you'll take a big vessel into a place like Kingston, Jamaica, and the cargo will be relocated onto a lot of, again, foreign vessels that will then go directly to Miami or go directly to Charleston or go directly to New York. And as a result, the Jones Law has just completely hollowed out the American maritime space. Savannah is the first location in the United States since 1920 to manage to build a super container port. It's upriver a bit, but the biggest vessels, some of the biggest vessels in the world go there regularly. You saw the one that was coming through. That was actually a fairly small one. But it's the only place in the continental United States can actually take these vessels all at once, with the exception of maybe Long Beach. Other places tend to do more mix of business. So, for example, the Tacoma port does take fairly large containers, but it's also a major export point for commodities coming out of the intermountain interior of eastern Washington and Oregon. Anywho, bottom line is, as long as we have these very, very large container ships, which are the norm for international trade right now, Savannah is really the only place in the United States that can take them on the East Coast at all. New Jersey just isn't up to snuff in that regard. So that's issue number one. Issue number two, if we're moving to a deglobalized period, we're going to have a lot of different patterns here, and our interactions with the Mexicans are going to become much, 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 much more robust. Now, there are some limitations on the infrastructure between Texas and Mexico that do a decent job of integrating the northern tier of states, but half of the population of Mexico is in the greater Mexico City area. And if we're going to have the expansion industrial plant that we need in North America in order to deal with the post-Chinese environment, we're going to have to metabolize a lot of what is in central Mexico. Now, there are two ways you can do this. The first one is to build a really robust multimodal roads and rail system going from the border all the way down into the Mexico City core. We should definitely do that. The second one is to turn Veracruz once again into a very, very large port so that product from Mexican City core can go down to Veracruz, get on a vessel, and then come up to the United States. Now, you can do that in one of two ways as well. You can use small shuttle tankers that go to places like Houston or New Orleans or Miami. Or if you're more interested in the Eastern Seaboard, you just put it on a mega ship and you put it in Savannah. So it doesn't really matter which path we're on here or how smart or how dumb we are in taking advantage of the changing world around us. Savannah's got the hardware in place for really any possible scenario here. And so the ships are going to keep coming. And so am I.